Hi, welcome to the Frugal Frau. I'm Sukey, your host. And you can see that today I'm not in the wood shop. I'm out in the garden. And the reason why I'm out in the garden is because we need to deal with this issue. This is an issue of the missing carrots. And I have a family to feed, and I don't like things getting into my garden and stealing my carrots or anything else. So I know it's not the dog. I know it's not the cat. They can't get through this makeshift lattice I've put here. So I told Tom something's getting my carrots and I'm angry about it. So Tom is made a series of these traps based on a design that's new and improved from what he and his grandfather used to make when he was a kid. It's a live trap, and I intend to catch whoever has been stealing my carrots. So that's the subject of today's video, the new and improved live trap. So please like, subscribe, and comment, and thank you so much for watching. Here is a picture of the pieces that you will need to make this trap, and a detailed list will be in the description on the video. Tom checks the depth of his side pieces to make sure that he can cut a rabbit to match the depth or thickness of those side pieces. Mark the rabbits on the inside of the top piece down the full length of the top. Using a knife, score along those marked lines. Tom uses a small 1/4-inch chisel to enhance those marked lines so that when he brings the chisel to cut most of the waste out, he can easily follow that line. Tom does the final cutting of the rabbit with a rabbit plane. The base gets cut with 2 stop rabbits. So here Tom is marking the end or stop of the rabbit on one of the sides. The bottom right picture shows a close-up of that stopped rabbit marked. Since the trap is being used outside, in addition to glue, Tom will screw the trap together. Here he is just drilling the pilot holes. Tom screws the top to the 2 sides. After that, flip it over and then screw the base onto the 2 sides. A little fine tuning there. Then apply some glue and put the 3 screws on each of the sides. Tom is going to find the center of the end of the base for the dowel so that he can drill a hole to place the dowel into. And the picture shows the completed assembly for the base for the dowel and the dowel inserted. Tom uses his hole centering guide to drill the hole into the end of the dowel holder, which then gets attached to the door. Tom has already centered and marked the placement of the dowel base on the door and pre-drilled pilot holes to attach this to the door. Tom glues the dowel into the dowel base, and then he's going to glue the dowel base onto the outside of the door, matching it to the marks that he already placed for lineup, and that will of course match the pilot holes that he already drilled through both the door and the dowel base. When he screwed this in, screws were a little bit long and it did split the dowel base, but that's not a problem as it can just be glued. Attach the door with a simple hinge gluing into the top of the trap. The other reason to put the dowel into a base is so that it adds weight, so that when the trap is tripped, the door swings down as quickly as possible. If the door wasn't as heavy as you would like, you can always drill in some lead weights either to the dowel base mechanism or the door itself, at near the bottom of course, to make this work a little bit faster. We used a piece of hardwood for that dowel base and the door, and that's why we have enough weight without doing it. Next, Tom is marking the placement for both the plug that holds the bait and for the hole into which the trip wire will be coming out and will be attached to the dowel. Now remember, the dowel is not yet cut to length because you cannot do that until you know what that distance is going to be from the edge of the trip wire coming out of the hole for the trip wire and where you want to attach the string that holds the trip wire to the dowel. Tom has cut a piece of wire for the door spring, and he's bent a little L into it. Now he's going to plenish that wire to give it more spring by pounding on the anvil onto the sides of the wire. So that means he's not plenishing the top or the bottom, but the side relative to the bend and the L. So you can see that here. It kind of flattens it out, but when you do this to a piece of round wire, it gives it a lot more springiness. And that's what you need for this door mechanism, because you want the door to be able to slide over the spring, and the spring comes up so that the little critter that you have trapped cannot push the door open to escape. Next, Tom is making a staple to attach the door spring wire to the base. So he just bends a piece of wire and then plenishes it. And after this, he will cut it to length. and then drill in holes into the base so that the staple goes easily into the base, because it's not going to be able to be pounded into the base because it's not that thick of a wire. The spring, of course, acts as a latch on the door. The next piece to make using wire, of course, is the actual trip wire. And so Tom has bent a little loop into the trip wire, and that's the loop that will be used to attach this string, which then attaches that to the dowel. So he flattens and plenishes that, and that just secures that loop. Then he puts another bend in it once he determines where that bend needs to be, so that when the wire is in the hole, that it sticks down far enough so that the little critter trips it. And then he has to put a little notch or bend in it so that it just barely catches onto the edge of the hole. And don't forget to plenish this wire too. And that also gives it a little bit more spring so that it will just slide easily through the hole when the trip wire is touched from the bottom. Take your wire and determine exactly how long it should be from that bend so that it doesn't actually touch the bottom of the trap. And then harden the rest of it. Next, install the door spring latch or door spring wire to the base using the staple that you already created, which you can see in the foreground on the workbench. And next, he's drilling out one of the holes for the spring staple, and then he will take the staple here and mark the other hole and drill that out. Pound the staple in. Then turn the trap over and flatten those staples because they went all the way through. This was a little bit of a tricky operation.
Spring's up now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we plenished it.
Mark on the door where the spring end will touch, and you'll have to cut a groove. With the door in the most open position, trim the dowel so that it meets up close to the hole where the trip wire will be extending through, so that the trip wire can be attached to the dowel with a string by tying the string to the loop end of the trip wire and then wrapping it around and tying it securely to the dowel. Drill a hole through the dowel, and then you can thread the string through that to begin the knot and wrapping of the string to the dowel. Tie one end of the string through the loop of the trip wire, and then you can tie it and attach it to the dowel. The knots you use are whatever knot you prefer. Cut a notch in the door so that the slip latch wire can slide to the outside surface when the door is triggered from the spring, and then the door can be secured with the wire because the notch is not as deep or as wide at the front surface of the door. At this point, the spring wire for the door can be adjusted so that the door works properly. and therefore whatever's in the trap cannot escape.
Boom.
At this point, you can now add the end of the trap, and it's feasible to cut a small window and then put some kind of hardware cloth, 1/4 inch preferably, over the window. And this is so that when the trap is functioning and you have something in there, you can look in the window and see what you have. Because if you have a skunk or something like that in there, maybe you want to handle the trap a bit differently than if it was just a rat or a chipmunk. Secure the hardware cloth with lath screws. Mark the placement of screw holes to pre-drill into this end so that you can secure it with screws to the body of the trap. Tom is now using a piece of striped maple to make the bait plug. So he's going to shape it so that it can sit securely in the hole and then have a receptacle for the bait, which he will drill into one end of it, but also be firmly in the hole and easy to, or relatively easy to, remove to refresh the bait from time to time. Tom is drilling out the plug end, which allows us to place bait in the hole, usually peanut butter and molasses or something like that.
Okay, so I've got the bait plug pulled out. I've got peanut butter in it, and I stuffed a little bit of feed in it. So the bait plug goes back in the hole. Actually, I've got a little bit of feed left here. I've already put some in. I like to put a little bit of like sweet feed or grain or chicken scratch, anything, when you're dealing with rodents. Now, rabbits don't need anything, but rodents do. Put the plug in there, give it a twist till you get a good firm lock. Then you press the spring down and get the key in the hole. Make sure that the horseshoe is towards you and check it. And then boom, all you got to do is they run by and you get to smoke them. And that's the end of it.